What's up everyone, my name is Robin and I'm glad you tuned in again for this short video. Well, I try to keep it short as always, but the topic we're going to discuss today is of significant relevance, I would say, especially for everyone seeking truth and meaning. So probably everyone, most people just aren't aware they're seeking it and they try to, use other ways to achieve it somehow or to get that feeling of fulfillment. But yeah, I'm going to talk about 5 hard truths we have to accept. And the first truth is humans suck, try to suck less. And for this one, well, I'm just going to dive right in. Psychological research has shown that humans are inherently flawed, with cognitive biases, perceptual errors, and unreliable memories, for example. Bias from actors and observers is a phenomenon where individuals attribute their own actions to necessity or preservation, while viewing the actions of others as negative or evil. Recognizing one's own cognitive weaknesses can lead to a more compassion and understanding for each other, basically. And I've prepared some cognitive biases we all fall into and also inherit from our upbringing and genetics. Like, it's basically ingrained in us to think that way, in some way. And of course, for some it's more, for others it's less. But I'm just gonna mention them, so you've heard of them at least. First, we have the all or nothing thinking, which is considering situations in only 2 categories instead of a continuum. I always notice this in the political landscape, especially because it's always so black and white. So if someone is for economic growth, it must mean he's against climate change, because those 2 can't go together apparently, which, well, capitalism has shown that it's difficult for sure, but at the same time, it's never black and white. It's never good or evil or easy or difficult. It's like always nuanced. Even with the simplest things that you may consider simple, that seem simple on the first glance, there's always a level of depth that has to be discovered, because as soon as you dive into a topic matter, you will eventually find that there can be complex, philosophical takes on the matter, no matter how simple it may be. Like, for example, if you say, it's generally a good idea to help people, then you could go one step further and say, well, how do you define good? If it's beneficial to help your child, for example, in everything they do, they will grow up demanding help or being lost in the world because they can't really act on their own behalf, So even a simple and seemingly true statement can be turned around and then explored a little deeper in everything. So that's the same with climate change. It's the same with our economic systems. Well, is communism the answer? Is it socialism? Is it capitalism? It's probably a mix. And we are pretty good at saying, well, this is true, I've proven it 1,000 times, or my personal subjective opinion is, and you can't really attack my subjective view because I've experienced it. It's based on my personal perception, so it has to be the truth and the reality. And just be aware that your thinking is flawed. And everyone else's thinking is flawed as well, just in different dimensions. But it's never true or false, it seldom is. Even if you say, there's this lake, and I've only seen white swans swimming in the water, there's still the possibility that in 100 years, there is going to be a black swan swimming in that water. And then your whole hypothesis of there's only white swans on this lake falls. You can completely basically neglect the whole hypothesis you made because there's one incident which occurred that basically threw it all in the garbage. So yeah, the second one is overgeneralization, viewing a single negative event as an unending pattern of failures. Most of our thoughts we have are pretty negative, I would say. We are pretty harsh on ourselves, and so it's easy to, well, sort of get in a downward spiral if something bad happens. Then we are on the lookout on other things that may happen to us that can also be interpreted as bad. But if we go to like flaw one again, we interpret something bad as inherently bad, which isn't often the case. If something bad happens, it's an opportunity to learn, and the hardships form our character. You know, the pressure forms a diamond. So every time you go through an obstacle or have a challenge or something, you basically form a stronger character, which is necessary in the long run to handle life as a human being. Third, we have the mental filter. That's focusing on a single negative detail and dwelling on it. I think we all know people who do that on a regular basis, and it's difficult to get out of it because you get sympathy from others. So it's always good to be like, hey, my life is so shitty, please help me, please pay attention. Disqualifying the positive, rejecting positive experiences for arbitrary reasons. Then we have jumping to conclusions, making negative interpretations without actual evidence. A lot of people do that. Again, the subjective experience you may experience is not the whole truth. It makes up maybe 0.00001% of what's actually happening. It's just your interpretation of things, based, of course, on everything that has happened before. But you can't say, well, this is the reality, if that's your reality. Magnification and minimization, exaggerating or downplaying the significance of events. Also, pretty popular thing to do. Emotional reasoning, assuming something must be true because we feel a certain way. And I know this is going to probably offend a lot of people, but your capacity to be offended by something should not be respected. You shouldn't even respect it yourself, because it's just an indication that you have to calm yourself a little and to be more reflective and to widen your perspective on the matter. Because usually, if we are offended by something, it's a personal attack on our identity, and we cannot be trusted with that. And we cannot trust our intuition in the matter as well, because, well, everything seems like an attack if we are so overly reassured that what we view as right or correct is actually correct. So everything that neglects that, we automatically assume, well, this is a personal attack, which often isn't the case. Of course, people like to, well, downplay your achievements and stuff, but you just have to stand over that. I don't know how to else say it, but it's just a thing that will occur multiple times. People always want to see you achieve till the point where you actually achieve like greater things than them, and then they want to see you fail. That's just how it is. We have should statements, using should and must statements that can lead to guilt or frustration. I've always said that hope is a pretty complex emotion you can feel, because on the one hand, it lets you achieve or strive for certain things that may be valuable to you. At the same time, if you don't achieve that goal you set, well, it's going to be frustrating to handle the rejection, basically. So you have to be aware of that. Labeling and mislabeling, attaching a negative label to oneself or others based on a single event. So again, humans are incredibly complex. I just said we all have our subjective opinions and views, and then there's an objective reality, I would say, and how we interpret that reality is based upon our personal experience. So you can't really judge someone just based on one account, or how he or she dresses, or what she reads, or how their car looks like, you know. They may be going through a rough phase based on a breakup recently. We have no clue. So just treat everyone with respect and just be a good human being. Don't be just kind, because you can fake kindness. Just be good. Be decent, you know, and you will get very far in life. Because if you always tell the truth, if you always seek the truth, and you altruistically try to better the world, then things are going to turn out fine, no matter what. I really believe that. Personalization, taking responsibility for events beyond one's control. That's something I always notice when reading the news. It lets us feel pretty badly, although we can't really change anything about it. These are external events that we have no control over, and still they sort of demand our attention and have the possibility to influence our days in pretty negative ways. If we wake up with bad news, like, our day is pretty much steered in one direction, and it's difficult to overcome that, and to say, hey, but my life is actually kind of okay right now, and no matter that people are dying in the West, like, it's horrible, don't get me wrong, like, it has always been horrible. There hasn't been like a minute of peace since humans existed, basically. But it won't help dwelling over it. You got your own problems. You have to pay your monthly rent, and yeah, that's what matters for you. And if you are like trying to improve the world in your based on your capacity to do so, that's a very admirable goal, and you should do so, because I think giving more than taking is something we should all or can all get behind, why it's a good thing. And especially if you have more than other people, it's very noble to do that, but it's not your responsibility. That also sounds harsh, of course, but you have to be aware that life rewards and punishes, and it's not fair. So you first have to sort out your private stuff and manage your relationships, and then you can give honestly and earnestly back to the world, and that's something you should do. I believe if you have a lot of money, the only thing that will actually fulfill you is donating money, to be honest, and to have an impact, a positive impact in this world. Maybe also starting a business, a charity, whatever it may be. Consciously changing the lens occasionally to think more clearly. Actually, that's an advice, I think. So there's all the stuff going on in the subconscious. I think 80% pretty much of who we are is decided subconsciously. So it's basically you slept 7 hours, and then you're not fully in a awake state. So your brain didn't have enough time, or your body, to down-regulate again and erase all that stress that has accumulated the day prior. So you were just waking up with like completely different thoughts and maybe a cloudy mind and everything. And then based on the few next steps you take, if it's taking your smartphone, if it's chilling on the toilet for half an hour, or if it's going to be drinking water and having a workout, this will subconsciously activate a lot of levers that will basically steer the direction your day is going to be, or go in some sort of direction. So a lot of processes aren't consciously grasped by us, like even subtle minor things like interacting with a person. If you're holding a cold drink, you're colder to the person as well, as instead if we're holding a warm drink, and stuff like that. It's just like we aren't aware of these tiny things that control us throughout the day. So just be understanding. Okay, those were some biases that influence us in our daily thinking and actions. Let's go to the second one. Everything you believe will one day fail you. This is how you grow. The human tendency to accept uncertainty and ignorance in some areas of life, such as the natural sciences, while often making biased and inflexible assumptions in other aspects of our lives, like social interactions. We rarely question our negative judgments about others and suffer from the rigid narratives we tell ourselves. Personal growth without recognizing and correcting one's own mistakes is impossible, which can be an uncomfortable process often inadequately addressed by the self-help industry. Becoming conscious of one's own narratives and distinguishing between good and bad stories. Bad stories provide short-term protection but lead to regret and stagnation in the long run. Good stories, on the other hand, lead us to better problems and insights, even if they eventually fail us. The thing is, the highest standard you can put upon yourself is basically the highest form of self-improvement. If you hold yourself accountable to your actual visions and goals and what you want to portray as a person, then the next step should be not to fool yourself in that endeavor, because we are the easiest person to fool ourselves. We can fool others, maybe, if you're a good liar and stuff, but you can't fool your consciousness. You can't fool your mind. And you can't betray yourself, basically. You know what's right, often, and at the same time, we believe something is right, again, subjectively right, which may cause bad outcomes in the objective reality. So we have to be aware of that as well. Something that seems right for us may be wrong for others. So again, we cycle back to just being a decent and good human being with a conscientious mind is, I think, the best thing you can do to handle this life. To accept that people have differing opinions and views and perspectives and lenses on which they look on life, and that it's not on you to change that. It's on you to basically accept that that's the case and that you don't have full control over someone else's opinion, and that you still have to somehow be the best version of yourself in the present moment. And not to dwell on the past too much, and not to worry about the future too much. And then you can truly think about the personal growth aspects that we should strive for as well. Because we only have this one life, we only have this one body, so it just makes sense to care for it. Okay, the third truth: you don't deserve happiness, you don't deserve anything. The human tendency to tell stories to justify our feelings can have both positive and negative consequences. Positive emotions can lead to self-aggrandizement and entitlement, while negative emotions can lead to self-doubt and a lack of self-worth. Discussing self-esteem and how society has tried to boost it suggests that this endeavor may not always have brought the intended results. The idea that feeling of deservingness or entitlement, whether positive or negative, are often based on shaky premises and ultimately say little about our cultural or actual abilities or worth. It is more important to focus on the here and now and to do good than to get entangled in thoughts of deservingness and worth. At the end of the day, who decides who deserves what? Some people believe in God and that if you do good deeds, that you will be rewarded for it in the afterlife. And that may be the case, it may not be the case, I have no clue, and I don't make a judgment about it. The thing that matters most is the actual moment. Again, we always cycle back to this one. And the idea that we deserve happiness somehow is flawed at its base, because happiness makes us complacent. If we're satisfied with a situation, we stop living, basically. We surrender to hedonistic tendencies. So tendencies that satisfy our lust, basically. And the thing is, happiness, we can train it. It's a skill. So if you decide to be happy and to structure your day in ways that makes it easier to achieve that state of happiness, you will most likely start your day with, social connections, with something that fulfills you. So it could be a project you're working on, it could be giving back to the world, it could be sports, for example, just healthy stuff that signals our body, hey, this is going great, I like being active, I like thinking, But even then, you can't control the outer circumstances. Something will eventually happen that you have no control over. We discussed this already. So it's on you to basically take responsibility and accept that things happen. And our brain is wired to recognize negative feelings and things happening to us in a more contingent way. So that's why we feel worse most of the time than good. And the thing is, we only work, or we function best as human beings when we're feeling good. And so our world constantly tries to rob us of that feeling, because happiness is not good for the economy, for example, or for politicians. If you're happy, you can't be controlled. So this goes again in like a different direction with like conspiracies and stuff. But I think it's pretty obvious. If everyone would be happy with the situation, well, what is there to change? What is there to buy anymore? You know, you have to think about this for a minute. And yeah, it just makes us complacent, basically. And so this strive for, well, I don't have enough and I feel a lack of something and there's like an emptiness inside of me and I can't quite pinpoint to what's causing it. It makes you move, it makes you improve, it makes you curious and try to learn something and to explore this world. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, because no matter what, if you're just sitting still, you're not improving. If you take more small little steps, and I think that's achieved by actually feeling dread and worry and anxiety, these are just like indicators that something is not right and that something should be changed. So we should embrace these feelings as well, because they will come up and in a higher frequency than actual good feelings. And at the same time, if we experience good feelings, like for example eating something tasty, chocolate, it's not really like, oh wow, this is so tasty. It's more like, this gives me good feelings. I need more of this. So I'm already, while biting in the chocolate, looking forward to the next bite to have that feeling again. So it's like our brain tricks us into this thinking pattern that this is something good. We need more of this. And it's based on like prehistoric formation of our synapses in the brain. So sugar means survival. So it must be good, you know? And today we derive the value out of other things. And if we would just like be, oh, sugar, 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 well, you can imagine what would happen. Diabetes, for example. So yeah, it's this thin balance you have to walk and to explore. Okay, I think we are on number 4. Everything you love will one day be lost, and this is what makes life meaningful. The idea that consciousness and life are finite, should compel each of us to try to improve the quality of our consciousness and our lives. This finitude is seen as what gives life its value. The fact that everything we love and strive for will one day end makes it meaningful and valuable. Memento mori. This reminder is a useful exercise to prioritize one's life and evaluate what is truly important. By accepting the finitude of life, people can paradoxically lead more fulfilling and happier life. An anecdote about Warren Buffett advising a young person to spend an afternoon writing their own obituary and to determine what is truly important in life and how to live a good life. This Warren Buffett thing at the end, he explained to someone that, hey, if you simply write down what made your life great and what you wished for, what you regret at the end of your life, just imagine you will die like next week, you have a pretty good understanding of what actually matters and what you should be probably spending more time on. And usually it's never the, well, I should have worked more, I should have made more money, I should have bought that car. It's always like, I wish I would have done more with my friends, spend more time with family, taught my kids something I learned too late in life, you know, or to had more free time to visit more countries. It's always these experiences, probably often connected to people. As mentioned, people are very complex but still, they are what make this life great and unique. The people you surround yourself with. Sorry. And the thing about YOLO, basically, there was this trend, you only live once. It's true, but this reminder shouldn't tell you that, hey, it's okay to risk my life every day because it could be the last one. Some people basically spend all their income every month, so they are at zero, because they could die at any moment. So they fully maximize their output, basically. They go out a lot of times in restaurants and stuff, but they're not planning for the future or planning ahead, So it's very short-term thinking as well, because usually life expectancy these days is pretty high and you can cure a lot of stuff. So you shouldn't just follow your instincts on everything, because if you follow our instincts, well, the chocolate thing again. Well, chocolate is good, makes me feel happy. Why not eat more of it, So there has to be a rational part thinking there as well. And I believe that our culture, the main purpose of our culture is to nurture our instincts into a good way, basically. So that we don't fall into like pitfalls and make wrong decisions. It's to recognize that we are flawed in our thinking and to turn that flawed thinking into something great for the community. I think that's what culture is basically about. And it has also erased this fear or anxiety of death, because we are not really reminded of it a lot of the times. We are reminded of materialistic things giving us happiness, or being an independent, strong human being, working 24/7, basically hustling and sleeping with lots of people. That's admirable, We are taught these things, but we're never taught like, hey, this life you're living, it's yours. You can do with it whatever you want, basically. And there is this day coming where everything will end and you are dying a lot of deaths in your life. Everything you do, you will do for a last time in some day in the future. Like going out with your friends on a camping trip, or giving your child an ice cream cone, or watching a very good movie with your girlfriend. There's always a last day for it, So we're dying countless deaths, and we never know which one will be the last one. And it's a sad thing to think about that, but at the same time it's kind of motivating to know that, hey, everything we do is special and unique. Like even the simplest routines you follow every day, it's still a unique moment. Even though you may wake up every day at 6 a.m. to go to work, there still is this feeling of, hey, every second here I haven't lived before. It's still something I have the possibility and opportunity to turn everything around. To not go this way as I usually do to work, but to spend 10 more minutes and walk through the park, for example. And maybe experiencing some wonderful moment where a family has a great time together, There's always this magic. And we are robbed sort of the perspective to experience that magic, So I think death it's a very powerful tool we should use more often. Okay, and last but not least, the fifth truth. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The Buddhist idea that pain is inevitable while suffering is optional. Much of our suffering results from the stories we tell ourselves about our pain and how we identify with these narratives. Since pain and problems are inevitable, it's better to choose the ones that can lead to a better life. Instead of eliminating problems, they should be transformed into better problems, because every path comes with a form of pain. When consciously choosing one's problems, one stops seeing oneself as a victim and begins to see oneself as a challenger. This is described as an empowering state in which one actively confronts adversity, A certain degree of dissatisfaction is part of human nature, and people tend to keep themselves in a state of dissatisfaction even when external circumstances may seem ideal. The way modern societies deal with pain and suffering, namely celebrating victim roles and focusing on self-sacrifice, can foster unhealthy narratives. It is important to uncover and rewrite destructive narratives that one may have carried since childhood, perhaps through therapy as well. This one is pretty important. I think there is a wave of self-pathologization, which means that you self-diagnose with like depression or anxiety disorders or trauma because you've experienced embarrassing moments or something that you still dwell on. You have to be aware that life is extremely chaotic and there will be moments in life where we just want to die, basically. That will happen. But you have to decide for yourself if you are really like depressed and tell yourself that, hey, everything I feel or do doesn't matter anymore. Or if you actually say, well, this part of my life right now is pretty bad and I hate it. I despise it. But why should I like crawl back into bed every morning and to, seek empathy of myself, Like, of course we have to be empathetic with ourselves, but we also have to be challenging with ourselves to say, hey, this makes me who I am, This is happening to me because of external things, of internal things, because I perceive it as like a problem. And maybe it isn't such a big deal. Maybe it's just like a specific period of my life that's just bad. And maybe I will get over it, It's always this shift of mindset. And you can do it like by writing down stuff, by journaling, by getting the rational part of your brain, the frontal cortex, to do the thinking instead of like the emotional part of the brain. Because if we analyze data with our emotions, the data is pretty skewed. So we should discuss these matters with our heart, our brain, our belly, our gut, and then come to a conclusion. Because otherwise, if we just consult one, it's not going to be an accurate picture of reality and what's actually going on. And as mentioned, most of life is struggle and suffering pretty much. So it's not good to fall into these holes that you can't really seem to get out of. Especially if you tell yourself, hey, I'm not worth anything and I can't do this and life is horrible. Why am I getting punished? What did I do? Like, you will always encounter problems. You will always have stressful situations, and it's on you to accept it and then turn it around. Personal attacks often reflect some inefficiencies in the attacker himself or herself, basically. So if someone throws like, I don't know, something mean at you, it's just a reflection of what isn't right with them, And that's usually how it goes. Like, if you are in uncomfortable situations, it's still on you to react to these conversations. And if you don't like what you're hearing, well, it's no problem to just leave, You don't have to be or pay responsibility to anyone, basically. It would be nice to say at a party, hey, guys, I'm not feeling this, I'm going to leave, but you can also just leave, It's your decision at the end. And if you don't feel comfortable with the people you hang out with, there's nothing wrong, with saying goodbye. Same with these victim roles I just mentioned. Like, people get sympathy, Like, there are social movements. When COVID was like an actual thing still in 2020, it still is an actual thing, I'm not denying it. But when it was like at its peak and like there were these lockdowns and everyone had to wear masks and get vaccinated and stuff, there was still this social movement with like Black Lives Matter, and millions of people went to Minneapolis and went on the streets, and suddenly like Doesn't matter that there's this virus going around. This is more important right now, you know? And we are celebrating victimhood. And I think that's not a good thing, because victimhood is not empowering. It's empowering to assess the situations and to look for solutions that benefit the whole of humanity. And simply saying, yeah, well, humanity isn't fair and there are these inconsistencies and inequalities. It's of course good to raise that aspect, but we also have to be reasonable when looking for solutions. And often the solutions we come up with are neglecting other people and raising other problems and challenges for the future. So instead of being emotional about it, we should collectively gather our thoughts and then think of possible outcomes that may occur when we go a certain way or act a certain path. So at the end of the day, the only thing that matters, to cycle back, is the moment, the present moment, and we should strive to become humans who are better at appreciating the beauty from moment to moment, and to be aware that life consists a lot of suffering, and that the story we tell ourselves, the frame we put around these stories, is what is the actual determinant of how we perceive it and how we're going to act in the future. So just be aware that with every problem there comes opportunity, and you have the full control, the full power to change your circumstances at any moment in time. I'm not a believer in free will per se, we can also get into that, but I'm a believer in the incredible repertoire of options that are laid on us. You know, if you are born in a relatively healthy family and wealthy family, you have a lot of options, and you should be thankful to nurture these options, or to be able to nurture these options. What path you actually choose is yours, it's your decision to make, and you should definitely think about it. But at the end of the day, the habits and the daily actions you take and the thoughts you form will get you to the goal you desire anyway. Okay, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Drop any questions you have in the comments. I publish an ebook as well about all these topics. You can get it for completely free on my website, gracefulglide.com. Just sign up with your email and I will send it to you. Again, thank you so much for listening. Recommend the book as well to friends. Give me feedback on it. I would highly appreciate it. Thanks for listening and see you next time.